It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
Rico Brogna, the New York Mets get another sweet victory as they go to freezing cold Minneapolis, Minnesota. They beat the Twins 5-4, and with my family completely out of town, I got nothing to do other than Rico every night. So we may have Ricos every night. This is episode 462, an instant reaction to the Mets' 5-1 victory over the Minnesota Twins, in which this game followed the formula. Now, you may ask, Evan, what is the formula for the New York Mets so far in 2025? The formula is this: get really good starting pitching that doesn't go particularly deep into games, which is what we saw from Clay Holmes. More on him in a few minutes. Have incredible scoring opportunities that you blow time in and time out, but then eventually come through with a couple of big hits, not many, but a couple. Have your bullpen be lights out. Let your opponent play garbage defense and win a baseball game. That is the formula. Did I lay it out well enough? Good starting pitching, just not deep into games. Check. Clay Holmes, 5 innings, 1 run. What's up? Have the bullpen come in and shut the door. 4 scoreless innings. What's up? Have the offense blow scoring opportunities. We saw that in the first inning. We saw that throughout this game. Get a couple of big hits, which they got. Pete Alonso RBI single. Mark Vientos with that rip double. Juan Soto with the home run. And then allow your opponent to just kick the ball all over the place. And in this case, it was throwing errors by pitching, which I guess has been a bugaboo with the Minnesota Twins all year. That's the formula. It worked again. I don't care how crappy the Twins are. That does not matter. I don't care how garbage their defense is. That doesn't matter. Take your wins, throw it in the bag, and move on. And the Mets have 11 of them. They are 11-5. They are not playing great baseball. They are still frustrating us with runners in scoring position, but they are winning on a nightly basis, and I can get used to that. I enjoyed myself on this Monday night watching the New York Mets defeat the Minnesota Twins. Did you? Now let's start with Clay Holmes. We'll start with that positive, and then we'll get to the offense. We'll get to Juan Soto, who kind of drove me nuts tonight, but ended on a positive note. I think in a lot of ways, this was the most dominant we have seen Clay Holmes so far as a New York Met. We have seen signs from Clay Holmes. That would be the way I would break down what we've seen from him. We've seen, I guess we've seen glimpses of what he can be as a starting pitcher. In his last start, he got off to the bad start. He pitched very well innings 2 through 5, and then basically ran out of gas in the 6th inning. What we saw in this game is we saw Clay Holmes come out right from jump and look incredibly dominant. And I would argue over the first 4 innings of this game, in which his pitch count wasn't particularly low, but it wasn't crazy high. It was 61 through 4 innings, which, if you think about it, that's pretty much a pace of 15 pitches per inning. I think where Clay Holmes is, that could get him to a 6-inning pitcher if you stay at that rate. But he dominates the first inning, striking out the side. I thought he dominated in the second inning, getting 2 more strikeouts and a ground out to first base with a single worked in the middle. He had another 1-2-3 inning in the third. He had another pretty good inning in the 4th inning in which he basically made one mistake. Matt Wallner hit that triple off the wall. And then Correa did hit a line drive, but it was right at Francisco Lindor. So he was in control for the first 4 innings. And I think the most impressive part was he threw strikes. Look, one of the things that can hurt Clay Holmes, we saw that in his time with the Yankees as closer, and we've seen it here in the early going in his first few starts, is just losing the strike zone. And unfortunately, that was his bugaboo in the 5th inning. That's what did him in the 5th inning, even though he escaped by only allowing 1 run, but really brought his pitch count up enough where he was done after the 5th inning. And I think that was the big negative. The positive is, after he walks Larnach, after he hits Ty France, after he walks Brooks Lee, and he puts himself in this horrible spot of bases loaded, nobody out, nursing a 1-0 lead, he does a great job of fighting through it. I mean, bases loaded, nobody out. Ask yourself this question as you're watching this game or listening to this game or however you were consuming this Monday night. Bases loaded, nobody out, up 1-0. Aren't we basically saying, hey, I'll throw a party if you get out of this tied 1-1? That's at least what I'm thinking. Find a way to just get through this, keeping this game at 1-1. And he was able to do it. Christian Vazquez hit that sacrifice fly. He got Julian to ground out on that ground ball to third base where Vientos just made a beeline to third base to tag the bag, which was a heads-up play because you get the lead runner, you avoid a possible bad throw. Very smart play. I don't even know if I would have made the throw to first base. I didn't think he had any chance to turn that double play. And then Clay strikes out Byron Buxton, who was a mess in this game. So Holmes, he did himself in by not being able to throw strikes in the fifth inning because it brought his pitch count way up. He ended up throwing, it was about 30 pitches in that inning. And that's just going to do you in, especially when you combine that with third time around the batting order. You combine that with the fact that Mendy is hopefully learning from what happened in the previous start where, look, third time around the batting order, it's not that I wouldn't give Holmes the chance to go third time around the batting order. It's that you need the right circumstances. And unfortunately, when you look at how many pitches he had to throw in that fifth inning, Mendy was spot on for taking him out. You know, I'd be a real hypocrite, especially after what we talked about with Griffin Canning in his last start and the criticism I had and Hoff had of Mendy for keeping him in the game in the fifth inning or in the sixth inning. Holmes was done. His pitch count was sitting at 90. I think there may be a time where Clay Holmes could get to 100 pitches. I don't think that's ruled out. But just watching this performance, he used everything he could to get through that fifth inning by getting those last three outs, the Vazquez sac fly, and then getting the 1 and 2 hitters to escape that at 1-1. So I thought Clay Holmes, we do our grades around here on the Rico. I'd give him a solid B. It probably should be higher, but I kind of grade on this curve where I'd like to see you go 6 innings. And the Mets got a lot of that, or at least they got some of that in the series against the A's, where Senga goes 7, could have gone longer. Peterson goes 6. They could have stretched him out longer. So they've got good length in the series against the A's, and Mendy continues to do a great job of keeping that bullpen very fresh, where guys just don't pitch on back-to-back days. It is continuing to be this art form that Mendy has perfected. Now, it's going to end at some point, especially during this stretch. Brazoban, Garrett, and Stanek ended up pitching in this game. So if any of them need to be used on Tuesday in game 2 of this series, tonight, if you're listening in your car headed to work, then you'll have another example of a guy pitching on a back-to-back. But here we are, 16 games into the season. Edwin Diaz, which was 2 weeks ago. Danny Young, who actually pitched in 3 straight games, and Huascar Brazoban last week, only examples where Mendy's needed to use his relievers on back-to-back days. So luckily they were in a position of strength after Holmes came out, having a relatively fresh bullpen. And what really helps, and this is a close game, so obviously you need to keep it where it is. But the fact that Brazoban comes in and gets 6 outs, that's huge. You only get 5 from your starter. To be able to get 2 scoreless out of Huascar Brazoban is huge in terms of saving this bullpen, continuing the trend of guys not pitching back-to-back games. But then more importantly, it's a 1-1 game after Clay Holmes gives up that sacrifice fly to Christian Vazquez. Great effort by the bullpen. Brazoban, like I mentioned, was in complete command. Only issued that leadoff walk to Larnach, quickly erased it with a double play. Reed Garrett looked dominant, so nice bounce-back performance by him after he was shaky in the Friday night game against the A's. And Ryan Stanek was fine in the 9th inning. Let's get to this offense. Pitching, A+. Pitching, chef's kiss. They continue to make the pitching lab look utterly brilliant. The bullpen continues to be awesome. Clay Holmes gives you 5 innings, only allows 1 run. Even Hoff, who's a little bit under the weather right now, even Hoff, who doesn't think Clay Holmes is a starting pitcher. I think that's what he tweeted last week. Even Clay Holmes, I'll speak for him since he's sick right now. So here's my Hoff imitation. Clay Holmes is good. I'm sorry, Clay. I apologize for doubting you. And I don't think any of us should take victory laps on Clay Holmes. He's got a long way to go. What I've said about Clay is let's keep an open mind about him. Let's not bury him after 1 or 2 starts. And so I'm not anointing him either. He's got things he needs to clean up. Again, it would be nice to see a starting pitcher like him go 6, dare I say, pitch into the 7th. But I thought what we saw from him in this game in very cold conditions, in which I was looking at his pitch selection to see what he was attacking with. He threw his sinker more than any other pitch. Threw his sinker 40% of the time and threw his changeup 24% of the time. That kick changeup, he barely threw his sweeper and he barely threw his slider. So he was very heavy on his sinker changeup, and it obviously worked. So good job by Clay Holmes. Now let's get to this offense. The Mets are 11-5. I want to repeat that again. The New York Mets are 11-5. So what can we possibly bitch about? It is infuriating when you get a leadoff double, which the Mets have gotten a lot of this season. I could look this up with my scorebook, but you know what? I don't have that much time on my hands. How many times has this team gotten a leadoff double and not been able to score that run? It feels like it's constant. So when Lindor starts the game by pounding a double off the fence, you can't get him in. Soto strikes out. He's also looking to bunt. I'm going to kill him on that in about 30 seconds. Pete draws a walk in which he really struck out. That 3-2 pitch was strike on the outside corner. But hey, Pete continues to be very selective, very patient. And who knows? Maybe Adam Hamari, the home plate umpire, is almost paying some respect to Pete Alonso's eye because he's been so good this year. But then Nimmo strikes out and Vientos grounds out. What an absolute tone setter for this game. Runner on second, nobody out. Nobody could move him to third, and they quickly, right out of the gate, go 0 for 3 with runners in scoring position. Acuna draws the walk in the second. Lindor does nothing. He does steal second. And then here's Juan Soto tapping back to the mound on a 3-2 pitch that's clearly ball 4. So Soto a little bit in his head, but credit to Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso, who was in an 0 for 8 slump after his very minor slump, but I'm just pointing it out. 0 for 8 after he has that big game Friday against the A's, comes through, jumps, I think it was on a fastball by Joe Ryan, and rips it in the left field for an RBI single. Pete has been clutch all year, and Pete did it again. And that was a very much a sigh of relief RBI single. Because at that point, you're 0 for 4 with runners in scoring position. It looks like you're about to botch another golden opportunity with Juan Soto being in the middle of that botched opportunity, and Pete bails him out. Pete's been brilliant. Pete has already put himself in front-runner status for his third Rico star of the series, but we're only one game in. We got a long way to go. Now, let me get back to Soto. So last year when Juan was on the Yankees, obviously I'm on the radio in New York. I talk a lot of Yankees. I did not like any time Juan Soto laid down a bunt, or at least attempted to bunt. And I think I said this to Pete when we were at the Met game a couple of weeks ago. I said to him, I don't mind Juan when he shows bunt. I mind when he actually attempts a bunt. Because showing a bunt is okay. You're going to try to draw the third baseman in. You're trying to draw the third baseman over. Not really in, because I don't think anyone's ever playing in for Juan. But they shift him. Not as much as you used to be able to shift him. But you have the third baseman basically playing over at shortstop. And so if Juan is showing bunt in an attempt, usually a failed attempt, to move that third baseman over, I got no problem with that. And honestly, you're not attempting to bunt, you're showing bunt. To me, there's a difference. I don't mind that. For a guy who takes a lot of pitches, for a guy who draws a lot of walks, no problem. It may even be distracting to the pitcher. But I never, ever want to see, and never, ever is very strong, so I'll phrase it this way. I would very rarely ever want to see Juan Soto try to lay down a bunt, even if it's 2 outs and nobody on. And let me explain to you why. He has such an amazing eye. He has such an incredible on-base percentage that he already has almost a 40% chance of reaching base, which are very good odds. So I'll take my chances that he's not going to get on base, but he may hit a double up the alley, or he may hit a home run. Now, when I say very rarely would I be okay with it, I can give you a circumstance where I would be. 2 outs, nobody on, you're down by 3 in the bottom of the 9th inning, lay down a bunt. Because in that case, that double does nothing for me. Just get on base. So that's why I want to couch the never, ever. Because, yeah, you can certainly create a situation in which I'd say, yeah, lay down a bunt. I mean, if to you look at that as a certainty to get the first base, go do it. But most other times I won't be happy with it. And I ripped that last year. I went on the radio and I said I never want to see Juan Soto bunt in situations like that. And there's a knee-jerk reaction to say, you're a Met fan, or you're just trying to kill Juan Soto. And I remember saying this at the time in April. I said it to Sean. I said, Sean, I promise you, I swear to you, when Juan Soto leaves the Bronx and he signs with the Mets, there's going to be a day in which he attempts a bunt, and it's going to drive me effing nuts. When there is a runner on second and nobody out in the first inning, how could you ever think of laying down a bunt? I mean, I know he's in a funk right now, or was in a funk right now. We'll get to his home run in a few minutes. I don't care how much of a funk you think you're in. Think about this, Juan. You have such a great eye. You're drawing walks every game anyway, even during your slumps. And this is what I appreciate about Juan Soto. Even in your slumps, you get on base. So with a runner on second and nobody out, what I would say to you is, if you draw a walk and there's 2 on, nobody out for Pete, great. I'd rather see that than you giving up any chance of driving that run in, because that's what a bunt does. Now, it may be successful and the Mets may have first and third and nobody out, but I also want to see you at least have a chance to drive that run in. If you draw a walk, you're still giving yourself a chance to drive that run in. You just had a great at-bat. You spat on a few pitches that were close and you drew a walk. But with a runner on second and nobody out in the first inning, I'm sorry, I don't see the other side. I don't understand anyone's opinion that would be different than what I'm saying right now, which is you cannot bunt in that spot. Like, there is no way with a runner on second and nobody out in the top of the first inning, anybody would be okay with that. And if you recall, he attempted to bunt. The ball went foul. And then he ended up striking out. So I think between the bunt attempt and then eventually striking out looking, the tapper back to the mound in the third inning, another opportunity with runners in scoring position. So his first 3 plate appearances, all came up with runners in scoring position, and he went 0 for 3. Popped up the second to end the 5th inning. The 7th inning was brilliant to see, because I think this discussion about Soto and the bunt and the failures with runners in scoring position, I don't know if I'd be smiling as much. But luckily, he hit that 2-run home run in the 7th inning. So there is certainly a feeling of maybe he is awakening. Maybe that'll be the hit to get him going. But he was 0 for his first. I mentioned it on the last Rico that he had not had a hit with runners in scoring position, but you tack on 3 more to start this game. Now, luckily, before Soto hits the home run, I mentioned Pete coming through in the 3rd inning. Great game by Luisangel Acuna. He deserves a lot of credit. Drew the walk in the 3rd, stole 2nd, scores on the Pete Alonso RBI single. He doubled with 1 out in the 5th. Unfortunately, the Mets couldn't get him to score. And then he laid down that beautiful bunt to start the 7th inning. And it ended up turning into basically a 2-bagger because of the terrible throw by the pitcher. But Mark Vientos was another guy who gave us a very encouraging at-bat after he grounded out and he lined out. And he was 0 for 2, still on the interstate. He comes up in the 6th inning of a 1-1 game, runner on first, 1 out, and hits that Piazza-like majestic line drive right up the alley in right center field. Pete's on his horse. He's able to score. You have that awkward play where the ball is thrown at Mark Vientos' ass for no particular reason. It was very odd. I guess it's indicative of the issues that the Twins are having. But a huge hit by Mark Vientos. And, of course, they get the tack-on run because, again, the pitcher makes a wild throw. I think at the time that was Justin Topa who made the terrible throw. And so it isn't like pretty. It isn't majestic with the clutch hitting, but you do get the big hit by Pete, the RBI double by Vientos, a little bit of a lucky break on the throwing error, and then you do get the Juan Soto home run. So some very encouraging signs, specifically Acuna, Vientos, and even Soto. And how about Pete? I mean, Pete got on base 4 more times, had 2 more full counts to add to the docket, both turned into walks, had the RBI single in the 3rd, and he had the base hit that started the rally in the 6th. So another perfect day from Pete, who continues to be awesome. And the Mets are able to overcome the fact that they didn't get much out of their offense in the middle of the order, towards the bottom of the order. But they win. And that's the beautiful thing about what's going on right now. They are winning. And there are things about this team that are frustrating that will get better. Now, vice versa, I don't think the starting pitching is going to maintain the best ERA in Major League Baseball. But nevertheless, continue to let it happen. Now, I do want to address one very important thing. I'm sure it's on everybody's mind, and that is the Jesse Winker violation strikeout in the 8th inning. Jesse Winker did not make eye contact with the pitcher, Kyle or Cody Funderburk, which is an amazing name. And Winker struck out. Now, luckily, at this point in the game, it's 5-1. Nobody's freaking out. But Keith Hernandez had a moment with Gary in which he's like, how do I score it? So Gary had a very creative way. I guess he said he puts the K like it's laying down, which I thought about doing. I thought about a backwards K and a frontwards K, combining it since it isn't looking or it isn't swinging. But what I've decided to do, I may have said this on the Rico before, I do a regular K with a V for violation. And I know that's why everybody tuned into tonight's Rico. I'm just kidding. You just needed to know how a geek like me scores a violation strikeout. But we did get a violation strikeout, something we don't see much of. But outside of that, it was a wonderful victory. And I love these cold weather games when we're not cold. Like if this game is at Citi Field or it's last week when those games were at Citi Field, you watch it, and even if you're at home, you feel for your brethren. But here, we're just looking at Minnesota. And it's cold. And Juan Soto's got the hoodie over the hat, which I got to tell you, I don't know if I've ever seen that. The face mask, absolutely. The face coverings, absolutely. It's very cold out. But Juan Soto went full, I'm putting the hoodie above the hat, which I got to tell you, I'd go the other way with that. I would go hoodie, hat on top of the hoodie. Not that I'm any kind of fashionista, but that's exactly how I would approach it. Now, I do want to get to your emails on this game, read a couple of emails in the middle of the game and concluding this game, but a couple of injury updates that we got from Carlos Mendoza prior to the game. Number one, Sean Manaea had an MRI. It came back clean, and he is now tossing lightly and will remain doing so for about 10 days. So we still got a long way to go with Sean because tossing lightly is certainly a step in the positive direction, but there's more to be done. Bullpen sessions, pitching from a mound, rehab starts. That's why the timetable is, a while from now. But certainly a positive that the MRI came back clean and he is soft tossing. The Paul Blackburn update, I think, is more interesting because it's more immediate. Blackburn is going to throw a bullpen session on Tuesday, according to Carlos Mendoza, with 2 ups. And assuming all goes well, he can begin a rehab assignment. What is the plan for Paul Blackburn? I think a lot of that's going to depend on where the Mets are in terms of their rotation. They are going to need a 6th guy, which Mendy confirmed. So the idea that Senga is just going to come back and pitch on regular rest because he only threw 79 pitches, that's out the window. They could go to the 6th man on Thursday. They could do it on Friday. Friday is the latest they can wait. But they could go a day early if they so choose. They could insert a 6th starter for the Thursday game against St. Louis, and then they would come back. So with David Peterson on Friday, and then Kodai Senga would be good to go on Saturday. Senga's going to pitch on Saturday either way, just because that would be his 6th day. So it's just a matter of, do you want to add the 6th guy on Thursday? Do you want to add it on Friday? Mendy offered no hint on who that person would be, but he did say something I thought that was very interesting, and I think will excite a lot of people prior to the game, and it's all related to the Jose Siri injury. So Jose Siri, as of this recording, as of Monday night's baseball game, has not been placed on the injured list, which I find kind of strange because the Mets are then dealing with literally a 3-man bench, really a 2-man bench, considering one of those guys is a backup catcher. Now, it's a lot easier to do that. You're not pinch hitting for pitchers. It's not like it was a few years ago. But Jose Siri was in a boot, and he's not feeling great. So what are you waiting for? Now, they could be waiting on a few things. Number one, they could be saying to themselves, we really don't have a lot of great options, so let's give it a little bit more time. And I don't want to say Jeff McNeil would just be activated because it does feel, according to Mendy, they want to give McNeil more time. By the way, Hoff, you looking to talk because you popped up on the screen, but I don't see you.
I did, yeah. Really quickly, Mendoza did make the announcement that series to the IL, fractured tibia.
A fractured tibia? That doesn't even sound good. That sounds serious.
No. That sounds like he's going to be gone for a while.
Yeah, a fractured tibia. All right, so we'll see what the corresponding roster move is. I thought it was obvious he was going on the IL. But all right, they gave it a couple of days. They didn't feel like they needed to rush it necessarily. And maybe a part of it's what we went over. They don't have a lot of amazing options, especially on their 40-man roster right now. But here's the exciting part. Mendy was asked about Acuna playing center field. Now, if you go back to spring training when we were talking about center field, I had mentioned, look, at the end of the day, I don't think Tyrone Taylor and Jose Siri end up as the everyday center fielders. I think whether it's someone emerging from the minors, whether it's Drew Gilbert or it's Jet Williams or it's Luisangel Acuna or it's even McNeil ending up in left and Nimmo being pushed to center. I don't think they would do it a lot, though it's certainly an option, and Mendy kept that open. But what about Acuna? And Mendy did say, he told Acuna before the game on Monday, hey, just be ready. We may use you in center field. And I wouldn't even, if I'm Mendy, say that's an emergency. I would think it's something I want to play with. Because what has emerged over the last couple of days is Luisangel Acuna forcing his way into this lineup. He has looked good. We got to see Luisangel Acuna and Brett Baty both in the lineup on Sunday, and Acuna goes out there and he gets on base a couple of times. What he does in game one of this series against Minnesota, he draws a walk that starts the rally in the third. He steals a base. He rips a double with one out in the fifth inning. He lays down that bunt base hit. Like, he supplies an element that is unique and is a little bit different. And because center field is not locked down by some sure thing, that's got to be opened as a possibility for him. And what I'm intrigued by, even in the short term, is Brett Baty gave you at least a pulse with what he did on Sunday. He rips that RBI triple. He had the really impressive 10-pitch at-bat in the fourth inning, and he played good defense. We are maybe a week away from Jeff McNeil. And by the way, since Siri's going on the injured list, as you pointed out the other day, Hoff, it opens up the possibility that Baty and Acuna can remain here when McNeil's back. They don't necessarily need another outfielder with Siri on the IL. And oh, by the way, McNeil could play the outfield, and we're talking right now about Acuna possibly playing the outfield. But I would be intrigued by Acuna in center field as early as game 2 of this series. Why not? Why the hell not? Tyrone Taylor is a nice player. He doesn't have to play every single day. And it's your way to get Acuna in the lineup. It's your way to get Baty in the lineup. And it's early in the season, so throw him out there. No one expects him to be a Gold Glover. He's not what Taylor is. He's not what Siri is. But if there's any time for him to learn and any time for the Mets to kind of take a look at Acuna in center field, why not right now? So Mendy opened it up, and I hope it's something they consider. Let's get to some of your emails, to ricob@gmail.com. Alex writes, the Mets continue to roll. Nice to see Soto finally getting off the schneid. Let's continue this amazing pitching. The bullpen is nails. It is. It is. Scott Stern writes, one small issue thus far. Can we agree it's kind of a problem that whenever the thought comes up of bringing in Diaz, we all collectively scream no at the TV? I mean, you know you did too. I screamed no at the TV, Scott, when they thought about Diaz coming in because it was 5-1 in the ninth inning, and I didn't want to see Ryan Stanek put enough guys on base to which they had to go to Edwin Diaz. So it wasn't about no to Edwin Diaz because he stinks. It was no to, really? I don't want to waste Edwin Diaz right now. Billy Fitz writes, I'm going to remind you this all year until deep into October. This is the best Mets bullpen of our lifetime, and we don't even have Dednell Nunez yet. I'm not ready to say that. The bullpen's off to a wonderful start, but to me, if I had to pick like the best bullpen I ever saw in Met history, probably the 06 bullpen. I know things didn't end well with Guillermo Mota, but Pedro Feliciano and Chad Bradford, Aaron Heilman and Billy Wagner during the regular season, and that's the key, like during the regular season. But ultimately, it didn't end very well. Ed Flood writes, finally, Soto is Soto, an absolute shot. He doesn't look happy or comfortable still, but he's Soto and he'll be fine. But how about Acuna? Good at-bats this weekend, now a great game. You know I wasn't super high on Acuna, but he is electric. Acuna is earning playing time. And we've always said it. It will take care of itself. So right now, he is adding a dimension to this team that they don't really have. And even with Jeff McNeil's return, I think center field is now opened up as a possibility for him. Ron Shea writes, top of the sixth inning thoughts. That was a huge RBI double for Vientos and his confidence. Continuing driving the ball the other way will get him back into a groove. And let's give credit to Clay Holmes. He very easily could have crumbled, but instead battled. Don't cash in that Cy Young bet just yet. Joking, not joking. Yeah, we got a long way to go for my Cy Young bet to actually turn into anything. But I do agree. I thought him fighting through the fifth inning was incredibly impressive because it could have turned bad. It could have changed this entire start. Bases loaded, nobody out. You know what that means. Things can get very, very ugly. Now, this was an email from Suzanne, and Suzanne wrote this before Soto hit the two-run home run. Okay, so this is Juan, 0 for 12 with runners in scoring position and really struggling. Suzanne writes, Evan and Pete, I've never written in, but I'm a religious listener. In fact, I'm probably one of the most random feds demographic-wise that you have. All right. Longtime Met fan. I was there at the 86 World Series. I'm a 47-year-old woman originally from Brooklyn, living in Montreal, and an actress and a voice and acting professor at the university here. Not your usual demo. I know. I've actually been a fan since you and Joe. Well, we appreciate that. That is a very unique demo. Like living in Montreal, I wouldn't say 47-year-old women. I hear we're very popular with 47-year-old women. But then being an actress and working at the local university, I think all that definitely adds to your uniqueness, Suzanne. We appreciate it. She goes on to write, anyway, I've been watching Soto, and I feel I have a hunch about him. He says that family is the most important thing to him, and I feel like it's possible he doesn't feel in the family yet in Queens. What do you think? Should we give him a raucous standing O at City for the next homestand? Maybe we need to show him we haven't lost the excitement. I feel like he may be more emotional than we think. I'll give you this observation, Suzanne, about Juan Soto. I think that we've already shown him a lot of love. I think we'll continue to show him a lot of love. I think that Juan Soto doesn't feel right at the plate. And that's obvious. Clearly, I'm not splitting an atom here. It's obvious watching him. He is not comfortable. And so there are things you're noticing, like he doesn't look happy, or he's not smiling, or he's got his hoodie above his head that makes you say he's miserable. I think it's just a guy who's out of whack. And they had an observation on the broadcast about Soto not doing the shuffle. We haven't seen a lot of Soto shuffles. And I think a part of that is he's just not comfortable at the plate. I don't think it's comfortable in the locker room. I don't think it's comfortable being a Met. I don't think it's I have regrets. I want to be with the Yankees. I think it's just literally a guy who is an artist. And right now, he is not painting as well as he knows he can. The good news is, and this is good news, despite him not clicking, he's getting on base a lot. Despite not clicking, the Mets are 11-5. And so that's exciting because when he does click, and I have full confidence he will, that will help offset the things that are going well right now that may not be going well in 3 weeks, like the starting pitching to a 2 ERA. But either way, nice win. The Mets have won back-to-back games. They are 11-5. They've opened up a 2-game lead in the National League East, and we're having fun. Now, because my family's out of town, there'll probably be another live instant reaction Rico after game 2 of this series. And, of course, at some point after this series ends on Wednesday night, we will give you a series recapping Rico Brogna. We appreciate you listening. We appreciate you downloading. If you have not subscribed to the Rico Brogna, we tell you that, yeah, you should. We'd appreciate that. Thank you very much for listening to Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.